bought a van from a cousin, and the problem that the van was having, it's a 2011 Town and Country, and if you know anything about Chryslers and Dodge Chrysler, Jeep, now which they're all together now, they're Stellantis and Fiat, but since about 1998, around there, they removed the regulated mechanism from their alternators, and they put it inside of the ECM, the electronic control module, also known as a computer or the brain of the engine. Now, if that chip goes inside of the computer, which is what controls that little chip, it'll stop charging because it's not regulating. And a lot of people, you go out there and then you get that P0622 code, and which says there's a open circuit or on the signaling on the field signal circuit. So that could be your alternator, but it could also be either the two wires that come from the back of the alternator to the computer, or it could be the chip. So what you do is, most people just take, they just go ahead and take the alternator out. They don't even test it. They just go to whatever, Vans or AutoZone, whatever, Riley's. They buy an alternator, and then they'll throw the alternator in there. Most times it'll work, but a lot of times it won't. It won't charge. And then people go crazy. Well, I just replaced the alternator. It's like, before you do that, test the alternator. So next step is to test the continuity between those two wires that are in the back of the alternator and where they connect in the computer. So where they connect to the computer, to the ECM, it's on the black connector, which is C1, and I believe C1, that black connector that's got four plugs, big lunks like that, it connects to the back of the computer. I believe that C1, the black connector to the back of the computer, I think the connector on the pin is C124, and then they have another connector which is orange, the body of the connector that plugs to the back of the ECM, and on that one is C2, and I think it's C219, pin 19. So you take the connectors off and you go to the pin, and between the pin and the back of the alternator, and there should be continuity, meaning current should go through those two. So if you have a break in any of those wires, you're gonna get a high resistance, or there's not going to be any continuity. So but if everything those two test good, those two wires, the continuity on those two wires test good, then your problem is in the computer, in that little chip. Now here's the problem, and here's what's happening. Here's where the scam is happening. What's happening is Joe Blow Mechanic, me, and a bunch of us out there, we go online and say, okay, let's buy a computer, because we know that's the problem. We already did the test. We tested the alternator, blah, 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 and we know the alternator is good. Shit, it's brand new. And sometimes before I leave the parts store, alternator on that machine, because sometimes you'll get a dud straight from the box, brand new, remanufactured from Advance, from AutoZone. You'll get a dud. You'll get a bad one. So you said, go ahead and test it. So they did test good. Okay, you take it, you install it. So here's the scam. I order an ECM from Flagship One. Flagship One. Don't order from these people. Just don't do it. Flagship One. Don't do it. Here's what they do. They say what they're doing is, so I get the computer, I install it, and I get, that's after I tested everything, I get the same P0622, the same fucking code. Now it worked for a second, you know, and then pop. So what's going on in this situation? Well, I went ahead and I got a fancy scanner with me, and I got in there with my scanner, and I read how many miles were on this computer that these people allegedly refurbished. 185,000 miles. Guess what's going on? What's happening is they get the computer, all right? So let's say they get what so-called core. Now you got a computer with 185,000 miles on it, right? So they plug it, they go ahead and pull the codes from that computer, and whatever codes they get, only those codes are the ones that they replace the chips related to those codes. If the code for the alternator drive chip does not come up, they won't replace it. That's the fucked up part. Now they're going to argue up and down, oh, you don't have evidence of that bullshit. Because you can't open the computer. You can't open it. They got a sticker on it. They just got somebody in there. They go and replace whatever chips are related to whatever codes they pulled. Okay? And then the rest stay on there. Then what happened was, years ago, they issued an end-of-life bulletin on that specific chip that controls alternators, the field circuit on alternators. What tells the computer, hey, I need charge. We need to let the alternator go into charge mode. Okay? Excited. So they issued an end-of-life bulletin on those specific chips, which means there's a limited supply of those chips on the planet. Now, I don't know if they've started making them again, but I do know that there is a problem with the pandemic and supply chains, specifically for chips. Okay, so I doubt very much that they went back and said, oh, let's just go ahead and manufacture some chips for Chrysler. No, they're manufacturing shit. They're turning all the factories to manufacture for the new cars that are stuck in the parking lots at factories all over the world that need to go out. They prioritize that. They're not going to prioritize old cars. And when they issue, most of the times when they issue end-of-life bulletins, it means end of life. You're fucked. You can only get a certain amount, and that's it. That's all you got on the planet. So knowing this, that there's an end-of-life, that there was an end-of-life bulletin issued on these chips, there are a bunch of guys out there who manufacture them. I mean, who refurbish ECMs. So they went ahead. Some guys that were smart, they say, hey, there's still a gazillion of those vehicles out there. I'm going to go ahead and stock up. So they bought a shitload of them, but there was only a certain amount of people. How many people do you know that refurbish computers? There's only a certain number of them. Okay, so what this, and I'm willing to bet anything. I don't have proof of what I'm telling you, but it makes sense that this is what they're doing. If the ECM driver chip on Chrysler Dodge computers is not bad, or meaning it tests that it's not giving you a code related to that chip, they're not gonna fucking replace it. I don't give a shit how many fucking miles that thing has. So during shipping or during initial connection, meaning from the demand of the alternator, if all of a sudden it pops, because that's what happens a lot of times when you have a demand on when an alternator goes. Sometimes if it takes the rest of the alternator out, the rectifiers, the diodes, whatever, it'll take out the chip in the computer with it, right? And all alternator can do that. It does that. Sometimes it's a domino effect. Electrical stuff, there's always a domino effect. It has a specific tolerance, and if you go above that tolerance and top that off with the fact that this shit is 185,000 miles, you're gonna pop that chip. You know, that's it. It's not a fucking, you don't have to be a super scientist to figure that out. So what happens is when you tell these people, hey, your computer did not work, right away they wanna blame, without knowledge, they wanna blame the person who bought their product, their piece of shit product from Flagship One. They wanna blame them. They wanna say, hey, we need, like, I was talking to this girl, and she's like, well, we need a certification from the mechanic. It's like, I'm the mechanic, and I'm telling you, it's bad. I did the continuity test. I did all the tests on those two little wires. That circuit doesn't go anywhere else. That circuit goes from the back of the alternator to the ECM, and it goes straight into that chip. That's it. It doesn't go around everywhere. Read the diagram. It's right there. There's a connector in between, and you test that connector. There's continuity, everything. There's no breaks in the wiring. It's the ECM chip, period. And I tell them, hey, you sent me something with 185,000 miles. Like, well, it says it on the website that are ECMs are not new. It's like, I'm like, no shit. And I bet you anything you didn't replace that thing. Well, we have to see the codes, and we need to. Oh, you can test all the codes you want. It doesn't matter. The scam is telling people that they have a completely refurbished ECM and not refurbishing the ECM completely. There's a scam. It's real simple. So don't buy from these people. And if you do that, buy from people before you buy from these companies that tout, you see them when you go look for something on on Google, next thing you know on Facebook, and you got all the shit you were looking for at being advertised to you. If you're going to order from them, you must tell them, hey, if I'm going to order from you, I need your word, meaning you need to tell me that you will replace each and every chip on that board. Matter of fact, I want a brand new fucking board. If you can't give me a brand new board, I don't want it, because those little contacts on the board, they get old, and they lose contact on that 10 little roads that you see in there, those contacts, so if you can, ask them, hey, give me brand new. I want brand new chips everywhere. I don't want, it passed the test. I don't give a shit if it passed the test. It's got 185,000 mile fucking chip in it. Okay, it's a piece of hardware that's 185,000 miles. Okay, if you're gonna sell 185,000 miles, or whatever miles, you got on there, you need to fucking make everything new in there. So to be truly refurbished, you can't just replace a couple of chips that test bad on that are related to your codes. You got to replace every fucking chip. Otherwise, it's not refurbished. You just patched it up and threw a little spray paint on it and fucked somebody in the ass with it. That's what you did without their consent. If you like that, hey, fantastic, go for it. But at least get fucking consent. So, be careful when you're ordering stuff online, and be specific and ask them. And if they dance around, they beat around the bush, oh no, we refurbish all the necessary and we do the diagnostic, blah, blah, blah. Fuck you. Next. All right? Don't, oh, well, we replace what needs to be replaced. No. If it's 185,000 miles and I'm paying you whatever, a G, 500, whatever it is for it, it better be fucking completely refurbished. All right? Not patched up. Fuck that. Refurbished means refurbished, not patched up. Remanufactured. It has to be done to the highest tolerance, to the highest levels. So what this people, Flagship One, which is the one I had the experience with, they're selling trash. That's what they're doing. They're fucking people in the ass. Don't buy from these people. Just don't. Don't do it.